Hey everybody, welcome. Thanks for pressing play. Great to see you. Well, we're back here in the Bronx for part 2 of the homes of David Berkowitz. Yes, I know we're not standing in front of a home right now, so you might be saying, well, where are we, Manny? What's going on? Well, we are at the site of the Christopher Columbus High School, and of course this is where Berkowitz went to high school. And we're here actually because, coincidentally enough, this high school is, well, right in the area where Berkowitz moved after the Army, and we're going to have a few things to say about that. But I wanted to start here showing you his high school because, well, we're on this trip of showing you where Berkowitz grew up, where he lived, the neighborhoods he lived in, the schools he went to. So I figured that it would behoove us to, well, touch all the bases and see all the sights. And also I wanted to start here because, well, quite frankly, I wanted to get into a few things before we see 2161 Barnes Avenue and the site of Berkowitz's post-Army, immediate post-Army years. So we're here at Columbus High School. This is 925 Astor Avenue here in the Bronx. This is just north of Pelham Parkway. And Berkowitz lived just south of Pelham Parkway. Now, what's interesting about this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get into this topic when we were kind of like not quite far away from where Berkowitz lived, but not immediately there, is because, well, there was a few things I wanted to get into about observations I've made just in the short amount of time that I've done this video series, which is this is just the second episode of it. And so as we're here at the huge Christopher Columbus High School, again, these monstrous schools here in the Bronx for all the massive amounts of kids that live in this borough. Well, I have to say that I can't believe I'm coming out here like 3 years after the video series started. I wish that I had actually come out here a while ago. And the reason why is because of, well, this issue of perspective and understanding. Coming out to these sites has allowed me to understand more the crimes of David Berkowitz. I know that sounds weird, but you get a lot of perspective coming out here and a lot of insight that you wouldn't normally get. So, of course, in our first episode, as we see the side entrance of Christopher Columbus High School, again, right near where Berkowitz ended up moving in the post-Army period. As we look around Christopher Columbus High School, I'm reminded about how when we saw Co-op City the other day, how really, and I'll just walk around the block, F it, how really it made me realize that he learned many of the skills that he later used in his Son of Sam spree. He learned them in Co-op City. He was part of the fire auxiliary. He was part of the NYPD auxiliary. He was driving all around the streets of New York City going after fires and police events. He was learning how to use scanners. He was learning about police tactics and practices. I mean, let's face it, the dude was studying how to be a criminal. He might not have been conscious of it, but he was learning skills that would end up helping him. But also, one of the things that I got a lot of perspective on was the fact that Berkowitz committed his first known documented crimes in that immediate vicinity of Co-op City. And we're talking about, of course, the stabbing of Michelle Foreman as we look at the huge campus of Christopher Columbus here on the Pelham Parkway section of the Bronx. So he was learning how to become the sneaky, stalking Son of Sam as part of, well, his pastimes when he was at Co-op City, the fire brigade and the NYPD auxiliary. He was doing his first crimes right there, which makes sense because he knew the area. Now, what's interesting about this area that I'm in, and this is the immediate area that he moved into post-Army, that critical period where things really started deteriorating for this guy. Heavily deteriorating. Okay, one of the things that I'm noticing about this area, and I should have known this because all you have to do is look on a map, but coming out here actually really helped clarify this for me. This is the exact area where the first Son of Sam shootings took place, where the kids lived who were his first victims, and also his later victims. We're very close to Bure Avenue, where Donna Laurier was first shot. We're very close to where Judy Valenti lived. We're very close to where Judy Placido lived. So he ends up moving to an area after the Army where in the immediate vicinity of it, he started his Son of Sam, his official Son of Sam spree. Now, I believe Son of Sam started earlier. I believe the first Son of Sam attack was May 13th, 1976 against the Netto family. I don't actually put in his stabbings into Son of Sam of Michelle Foreman and potentially an old lady who, quite frankly, no one is really sure whether that actually happened or not. But regardless, this dude is doing his first known documented violent acts just a block away from where he lived in Co-op City. And he starts his Son of Sam spree in the immediate area, within like half a mile of here, not even, of where he went to high school and where he was living when he moved back from the Army. So I find that highly interesting, and of course it's another sort of blow against this whole stupid, not that we need it anymore, but another blow against this whole stupid process theory and cult theory of Son of Sam. It's like, you know, we're right in the area where we walked around with Gary and talked about like Valentina Suriani lived around here. St. Lucy's School is around here. This is where near where Gary and Val and Gloria and all of these people who were associated with this case tangentially. This is the area. So it's highly interesting that he chooses to do his first crimes, both his first foray into violence, known violence, as we leave the immediate area of Christopher Columbus High School and head down to Barnes Avenue to go see his apartment building, and I'm going to try to get in. I don't make any guarantees, but I'm going to try to get in. But isn't it interesting that he chooses to start Son of Sam right in this area? It's almost like self-soothing. He wants to start where he's comfortable, where he knows the locations the most. And of course, what better area to do that in areas in which you lived, right? So this whole process thing, it's like, isn't this cool? It's like all these weird private houses just in the middle of this urban landscape of the Bronx. Not quite sure what these are. Then across the street, we have short little housing projects, very similar to where Valentina Suriani lived. So we're to believe, if you believe Maury Terry's stupid theory, which of course no serious person does anymore. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, especially after the Billy the Artist revelations. So yeah, okay, let's get together in Mr. Real Estate's house and let's plan mass murder. And we're just gonna happen to start it right where Berkowitz grows up. I mean, why would they start it here? Wouldn't they wanna do it in an area where there's no connection to anybody or anything, or personal connection that can be investigated or looked into? But no, they started right in Berkowitz's neighborhood where he lived post-Army. So it's the stupidest shit in the world right now are these cult theorists, and they have no place in the discussion. Let them have their fun playing in the sandbox, seeing connections everywhere where they don't exist. We'll be over here directly in the path of reality, which is actually much more interesting. And coming out to these sites gives you perspective because you can see how close everything is and how he lived in the neighborhoods that he later shot people in. Even Son of Sam started in his immediate vicinity with the Netto crimes. So he moves to these different areas, gets very familiar, and then commits crimes in these areas almost exclusively first. Then later he goes out and widens his scope. But first he starts close to home. And we can see that this area of Barnes Avenue and Pelham Parkway, which we're seeing over here, which we have to cross, this was close to his home on Barnes Avenue, which we're going to be to in a hop, skip, and a jump. So doing this series has actually given me quite a good perspective on and a feel for this guy. He chose to do things, his criminal activities, first close to home and in areas where he was comfortable with. I can't say I find that very fascinating, but I do find it interesting, and I find it very cool to come out here to these areas and see it, and of course taking you along for the ride. This is the first time I've ever walked around and seen Columbus. For some reason, I always thought Columbus was in high school was in like a totally different area of the Bronx, but it wasn't. It was right here, just a couple blocks away from Barnes Avenue, where he lived post-Army. And so, of course, post-Army is that critical period where he comes back. All his friends have moved on in life, jobs that he wanted. Many of them were now law enforcement. Many of them had relationships and were married, right? Everything that this guy Berkowitz wanted and fantasized about, his friends had. He comes back, he has nothing. No job. His father had remarried some woman that he wasn't really all that into. They moved to Florida. He leaves Co-op City and he moves to this area right here, just south of Pelham Parkway. And of course, right near where his first victims lived, and unfortunately, right near where his first victims died. So we're now on Pelham Parkway South, and the Bronx is a big borough, but we're actually not that terribly far away from Co-op City and from Soundview. And so as we see the sights here, as I look at my notes and I figure out where we're going next. So anyway, as we like to do, we're flying by the seat of our pants. But we have some things to talk about regarding, I must have lost that piece of paper with that in it. Doesn't matter, I remember what I was gonna say. But we have some things to talk about. So anyway, this area was once another one of these areas that was heavily Jewish. You can still see Bronx Jewish Center right here. Young Israel of Pelham Parkway over there. This area was heavily Jewish, heavily Italian, very similar to the Soundview area where Berkowitz grew up. And this area stayed nice for longer into the 1900s. It's still actually relatively nice, although it's not as nice as it used to be in the 1950s, but it's still a nice area, as you can see. So he moves here. This is where John Comparetto saw him in his apartment on Barnes Avenue. And this is where the deterioration, the serious deterioration starts. You can trace Berkowitz's descent to his post-Army years. He goes to the Army, trips out on all sorts of drugs, LSD, becomes nihilistic, angry at the world, turns from a heavy conservative wanting to fight into a peacenik, railing against the US government and all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, he loses his mind basically. And he comes back to New York, and this dude's in a dark place, he's not happy. Right? And he moves to this neighborhood. His father isn't, he feels rejected and abandoned by his dad, who moves to Florida. We got a big police presence down here. I wonder what's going on. I hope I can go down the block. And let me just see what's going on while I continue. I could get down. So now we are on Barnes Avenue. Okay, and Barnes Avenue, of course, is the site of 2161 Barnes Avenue, which is the apartment where Berkowitz really starts descending, because he's living here post-Army, and this is where he's living when he goes and stabs Michelle Foreman, close to his childhood home of teenage home of Co-op City. This is where he's living when he first starts writing letters to his neighbors about their loud and annoying television sets, and we'll talk about that. And also, of course, this is the neighborhood where he first starts actually taking a gun and shooting living things. Now, the first living things he shot were dogs in the back alleyway of his immediately facing his building. This is not his building, but I thought this was kind of a cool little spot here. But the mental deterioration and the violence starts ramping up here. Before the Army, it was 1971, he just got out of high school. He wasn't committing acts of violence, overt acts of violence against, well, documented acts of violence, let's just put it this way. We don't know what was going on in this dude's private life, to be honest. And actually, it's funny because after I did that first video talked about the stabbing of the guy behind his building at Co-op City, Lorenzo brought up a very interesting point. And that point was, yo, did Berkowitz do that stabbing? I mean, we already know he stabbed somebody at Co-op City. Did Berkowitz stab Mr. Bieber? All very interesting questions. And of course, I truly believe that Berkowitz had more bodies. And there's some tantalizing clues in the Loria files, which I'm gonna do a whole other video on. I'm not gonna get into it now. But we found some interesting stuff that might just be Berkowitz shooting people before the official Son of Sam shooting starts, and with a gun that's not a 44, just like Lorenzo surmises, and I agree with 1,000%. So right now we are here. We are in front of 2161 Barnes Avenue. This is the building where he moved into apartment 5E in 1974. In the 74-75 period, he lived in the back on the 5th floor. When his father moved to Florida, he moved here, and you could see it's a very nice building. I'm gonna see if I can get in.
Sorry, this is heavy.
Drop it down. Let me give you the key.
I have ice cream. Oh. Okay.
I don't give you the key. You're not gonna get in.
Yeah, no, it's because I have ice cream.
Hi,
It's
sir. How can I help
melting.
you?
Hi.
Is coming with you?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
What are you
I have
looking
ice cream. I have to go.
I'm filming a video. This is a video on a famous person who lived in this building. And I was hoping that I could get up to the 5th floor. You could accompany me. I don't mean any trouble whatsoever.
Whose person is famous here?
A famous criminal. Did you ever hear of Son of Sam, David Berkowitz?
No.
He was a famous criminal in the 70s. And he lived here for about 6 months.
He's living here?
No, this was in 1975.
Okay, but you get the video and stuff like that, you have to ask the main office and the super.
Oh.
You're not allowed to do that like this.
Are you sure?
So please don't record it if you got no permission for that.
Well, I'm not going to go inside, but I'm allowed to record on the outside. I hope you don't mind. But I was hoping to get up to the 5th floor just to record. I don't mean any trouble.
Okay.
Is it possible that you could let me in?
Do that thing, no, you can't do that thing here without permission from the main office.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
you ask them for a permission, you got through, whatever you want to do.
I doubt they would have let me. Anyway, so they're not letting me, but we'll see.
Sam lived there.
Son of Sam lived here.
I remember the time when he was killing everybody.
I won't get you on camera.
Here?
He lived here. He was in the Army in 1974. He moved back to the Bronx because he lived in Co-op City.
Right.
He moves back to the Bronx. He moves into this building, and he immediately starts shooting dogs on Wallace Avenue in the backyard. And he starts complaining to his neighbors that their television is too loud.
I never knew he lived here.
Yeah, and his first victims, he shot right around here.
Yeah.
Right around here. So I'm doing a tour of this area. I was hoping to get in, but I don't think I'm going to be able to get in.
Right. This guy.
Can you let me in later?
Well, I'm going out now.
Oh, okay. I'll throw you a 20 if you let me in.
No, it's not that. I will let. He's there.
Maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk back to Wallace, and then I'm going to walk back here. Maybe this guy will be gone. Yeah. I'll walk in if someone just lets me.
In the night, you can get in.
The night I can get in? All right. because I got into his childhood home on Stratford Avenue.
He won't be standing out here.
I know. Hey, listen, thanks. I'm gonna walk around the other side. I appreciate
That's a
it.
video you making?
Yeah, I put this on my channel. I got thousands of subscribers. People love these videos. So
Yeah,
this will be
sure.
on tonight. Thank you, sir. Maybe I'll see you again. I appreciate it. See, people are always so very cool. So anyway, this building is where he lived, and it's a nice building, quiet, nice block. But what's interesting about this building is that this is, again, the scene of where he starts seriously fighting back against the world in anger. He, as I told this nice gentleman, he shot his neighbor, his backyard, the dogs of the super across the street, and he was sending, very reminiscent and very similar to Craig Glassman, he was sending letters to his neighbor threatening death over their television set being too loud. And of course, in The Ultimate Evil, Maury Terry lies about that, but we're gonna talk about that in a second. So we're coming up on the corner of Leidig and Barnes. I knew when that guy told me he was the super that he wasn't gonna let me in. Supers haven't, there's no upside to it. It's no advantage to that guy letting me in. All it could do is get him in trouble. So this is Leidig Avenue, the famous Leidig Avenue. And we're gonna walk to Wallace, which is the next street over. And this is the building 2150 where he shot the dog, this one right here. Now, there's a Mexican restaurant where if I went in here, I could get into the alleyway.
Relax, she's opening it.
But I don't think that that's gonna happen.
Let me see.
Anyway, there's a slight confusion as to this actually address, and I'm glad that we came out here because I wanted to clear it up. In Berkowitz's letters to Abramson, we're gonna walk to Holland first. He actually says that the building that he shot the dogs in was on Holland Avenue, Holland. And he puts a map, he supplies a map to Abramson. And in that map, you can clearly see, I'm showing it now,
My dog is
that he has Holland Avenue 1 block over from Wallace. I mean, from Barnes. That's just not true. Okay, that's an error on his map. He made a mistake. Holland Avenue is actually coming up here. It's 2 blocks away. And the reason why that's important is because he said that his apartment faced the back and was facing an alleyway of the other building that was facing his building, and that's where the dogs were, in the alleyway directly behind his building. That would be impossible if that building was here on Holland. He said it was 2150 Holland, which we're gonna see. That's 2 whole blocks away. The alleyway behind the Holland Avenue building that he said the dogs were in faces Wallace and not Barnes. But because he did mention this building, even though it was a mistake, see, people are now gonna say, oh, it's a conspiracy. Berkowitz was giving us a secret message. He was telling us that the story was fake by giving us a wrong address. Sorry guys. It's very mundane. Berkowitz is allowed to make errors. He didn't grow up in this neighborhood. It was several years after he lived there. Okay? He just confused Holland for Wallace. Wallace, Holland, Holland, Wallace. They kind of sound the same. And the truth is, 2160 Holland Avenue, which is right here, which is the building he said in his map, it does not face Barnes Avenue. And he absolutely lived on Barnes Avenue. So there's no way in hell that he could have been facing this building. It was actually on Wallace, not on Holland. And if you look at his map that he drew, which I'm gonna show you again, if you just substitute the word Wallace for Holland, if you put in the right street as opposed to the wrong street, because again, he made a mistake and Berkowitz is allowed to make an error. If you substitute and put in Wallace for Holland, the map is dead accurate. He talks about a library on the corner, and he points out the building with pinpoint precision. but he was talking about 2150 Wallace and not Holland. In fact, that was 2160 Holland Avenue that we just saw. There's not even a 2150 that exists. So let's go see 2150 Wallace, which is the building where the dogs lived. Very similar neighborhood to several of the neighborhoods we've been in the city. Very, very similar to the Soundview neighborhood. Not very similar to Forest Hills, although a lot of the same little storefront shops and whatnot. But we're coming up on Wallace Avenue now, and this is the street where he shot the dogs. And in fact, there's the building in which he shot the dogs right over there. 2150 Wallace Avenue. Not Holland, because it's this building here, the back of which faces Berkowitz's apartment. So I'm glad we were able to come out here and clear that up. So this is the building where the dogs lived, where Berkowitz shot these dogs. So Berkowitz's violence, real violence towards the outside world. Now I gotta qualify that statement a little bit. According to him, he was being violent against the outside world ever since he was a little kid, right? With acts of mischief and vandalism and killing animals and so on and so forth. But the actual overt acts of violence against living things that were larger than insects starts when he's living here. And we're talking, of course, about the shooting of the dogs and also the stabbing of Michelle Foreman, which took place when he was living here as well. By the way, we're gonna only spend this video here in the Bronx because I've just come to realize that it's better to keep these videos shorter and more concentrated on the one area, so we could really learn everything there is to know without diluting it too much. So we'll go to Coligny and Pine. That'll be one video because there's not too much time to spend on either. Or maybe not, depends. But this video is only gonna be the Bronx. And I wanna get into 2161 Barnes Avenue. I don't wanna leave unless I try again. So what I'm gonna do is just sort of hang out here, see if there's any way I can get into the back alley so we can see where he shot the dogs. Again, don't get your hopes up. You know, they have this shit locked up like crazy. But let's just see what happens if I try to open this. Locked. So this would lead to the alleyway where he shot those dogs. And his backyard, his back window faced that alleyway, just behind this building on Barnes Avenue. So once again, the liar, the drunkard, the manipulator, the wig wearer, the chain smoker, the not good friend, the guy who would send you 1,500 feet this way when he really meant 1,500 feet that way, the wig wearer, the snap suture lover, the bullier, the abuser, the manipulator, the guy who juiced information, the guy who straight up lied to your face, the guy who didn't vet Billy the artist or didn't care that the information was accurate. Maury Terry lied about this too. If you read his book, he says Berkowitz didn't shoot the dogs, that it was a neighbor who shot his own dogs. Berkowitz clearly admits to shooting these dogs. It's common knowledge. He admits it all over the place. He said he shot them. He even names them. He knew their names. He wrote maps about shooting them. He drew maps of where they lived, where they were barking. He talked about how they barked extensively and drove him up the wall. And Maury Terry's saying that he didn't do it. Maury Terry also left out the stabbing of Michelle Foreman, which I found interesting, and which Paul Hart correctly pointed out to me. He doesn't talk about that at all in the Ultimate Evil, of course, leaving out a major part of the piece of Berkowitz's violent history, and also leaving out context of the escalation, and also the context of this guy started doing his violence in his own neighborhoods, which we're now seeing. Son of Sam shootings took place in the general vicinity of this neighborhood that I'm standing in right now. Donna Loria, Valentina Suriani, Judy Placido, Valenti, all lived very close to here. And with the exception of Judy Placido, who was shot in Queens, they were all shot very close to here. Again, self-soothing. The dude was doing violence in neighborhoods that he knew like the back of his hands. Co-op City, and then he starts in Barnes Avenue, works outwards. Then he gets more bold and more confident and ends up in Queens and eventually Brooklyn. These are perspectives that we get when we come out to these neighborhoods and we see the proximity and we realize these things. It's very cool to me as a Son of Sam researcher to see this. So here we are back at Barnes Avenue in Leidig. This is the, whoa, there was almost an accident there. This is the apartment where John Comparetto went up to, where he said it was very sparsely populated with very little furniture. I still see that super there, so he hasn't moved. Wait, where's he going? No, he's hanging out. All right, we're not getting into this building today. Maybe another day. Maybe that'll be a supplement. But this guy ain't letting me into this building. But anyway, we could see the block here. Very nice, quiet Bronx street. Dude couldn't find peace here. He couldn't find peace there. He couldn't find peace anywhere. Here's the library. This is the library and the low buildings of shops that he details very accurately in that map. Right above there is the back of 2150 Wallace, not Holland, 2150 Wallace, which we have just walked in front of. If we were able to somehow go down there, that would be where he shot the dogs. And Berkowitz lived in the back. Actually, let's go back to Leidig and see if it's at all possible. He lived in the back behind there, if you were to like go around that corner and into the back. Let's see if... Nah, it's not gonna be possible. But anyway, Berkowitz lived in apartment 5E there. If I could get in, guys, I would. If that super wasn't there, my ass would have snuck in by now. But them's the breaks. That's what happens when you just come out and you don't plan, right? I mean, how could I plan? I just always come out without a script and without knowing exactly what's going to happen on any of these videos. And that's I think the fun of it, actually. I'm just sort of like chilling here to wait to see whether this guy is going in or not. I'm just killing time. I hope you don't mind, because I want this guy out of here. And I'll just take some more views of this guy's building. 2161 Barnes Avenue. So remember, the Son of Sam spree didn't start until he moved to Pine Street. But this dude was still doing acts of violence. So getting back to Maury Terry and his lies. So Maury Terry leaves out the dog killing, and he also poo-poos the letter to his downstairs neighbor in this building, which was very reminiscent of Craig Glassman. Maury Terry in The Ultimate Evil says that he spoke to the super of this building, a guy named Lynch, in 1984. And the guy says, oh, it was a myth that those letters were violent. They were just normal letters. I saw them. Maury Terry writes that. Well, the reporting at the time wasn't saying that. The reporting at the time was talking very specifically about how these letters were threatening death. And they even named the downstairs neighbor. It was a lady named Becky Borgman who lived there. She was an elderly woman, and she lived below him, and her television was loud. I just got my eye on that super. The television was loud, and he was sending letters to her that had drawings on them and that were threatening death for her television, saying that she was going to be in hell for it was exactly what he wrote to Glassman later, and also to Carr, and also to the Netto family. So the deterioration started here in this building. I mean, it was already starting, but the real slide down and towards mental deterioration started when he was living here. And of course, we have to add into all of this the fact that he didn't have any girlfriend, he didn't have any love, his friends were all moving on, he had no hope of a future, noise was bothering him, he didn't want to turn into a dirty old man, and so on and so forth. All the frustrations of his life really started coming into a head when he lived here at 2161 Barnes Avenue. And of course, as we've said repeatedly, but which I still want to repeat and remind you about, his crimes took place initially in the neighborhoods which he was most comfortable with. And I think that that's very important to understand. And it gives a lot of perspective, and seeing these places and walking around the neighborhood gives us a good feel for that. Co-op City in particular, and now Barnes Avenue. So, all right, well, it doesn't look like I'm gonna be getting in. Well, actually, let's see this, because this actually is very similar. This is not, now I'm gonna walk in here, even though this isn't the same exact spot, but this is very similar to what we would have seen had we gone behind Berkowitz's building. So let's just play pretend. Let's say we were in the alley and this was Berkowitz's building and this was Wallace, where the dogs were. It looks exactly the same. So Berkowitz's apartment would have been like up there, and those dogs would have been allowed to roam around. I mean, the look is exactly the same. The architecture's the same, the building's the same. Let's just pretend, okay? Because we can't get into that exact spot. Berkowitz's apartment would have been 5E. There might have been one floor above him in his building, and those dogs would have been down here barking. So one night he just goes out and he shoots them, or maybe early morning. I'm not quite sure when. But he shoots these dogs. He admits that he shoots these dogs. There's no question, yet Maury Terry even lies about that. Says, oh, he didn't shoot the dogs. It was the super shooting his own dogs. Maury Terry was the biggest apologist for David Berkowitz in existence. It's actually quite sick. So anyway, not the best and fullest production video because I wanted to get in there, but this guy didn't allow it. And the last thing I'm gonna do is fight with a super of a Bronx building because I care about you guys and I want to always get you the best content possible. But today it just ain't gonna work. So anyway, I think we did what we needed to do today. We spoke about, we saw Columbus High School where he went to high school. We saw Barnes Avenue, we saw Wallace Avenue, we saw Holland. We talked about the mistake in the map that he drew for Abramson. We talked about the nature of his crimes in the sense that he started doing violence in his own neighborhoods against his own neighbors, and even Son of Sam was started in areas near where he lived, very similar to the stabbing of Michelle Foreman, which took place in an area near where he grew, just down the block from where he grew up. And of course, Son of Sam started the same way. He started Son of Sam May 13th, 1976 on Wicker Street, right outside his front door. So we're getting a feel for this guy. I'm liking what this video series is doing. So anyway, that super's got his eye on me. He knows what's up. Actually, can we look in? Yeah, we can look we can get a little glimpse. We can't go in, but we can get a little glimpse. So this would be the back of Berkowitz's building, and the alleyway where the dogs were would have really just been just to the left, maybe about 50 feet down that way. But that's about the best we can do for you today. All right, guys, well, I think we did what we needed to do today. Maybe I'll come back and I'll try to sneak into this building for another video where we just do something real quick. But I got the eyes of the neighborhood on me today, so this isn't gonna work out. But at least we did see, we got a feel for things, and we discussed the nature of this guy's crime spree, which coming out here, again, has helped put this into a lot of perspective for me. So anyway, I want to say thank you for watching. And our next video in this series will take place at 174 Coligny Avenue in the Westchester town of New Rochelle, where David Berkowitz lives with Jack and Nan Cassara. And Jack, of course, later becomes the famous General Cosmo in the satanic cult in Berkowitz's mind that was ordering him to do these killings. And that's basically it. All right, guys, so listen, we'll see you on Coligny. Take care.